Today we have ourselves a 2014 Dodge Grand Caravan. And I will say that unlike a lot of the other vehicles that I've reviewed so far on the channel, this one's a pretty unique piece. But as I've discussed before, there are occasions where I might end up running into a few roadblocks. As in this exact case, the guy who basically owns this vehicle and is lending me out to review it is prohibiting me from driving it or even accessing it, much like with a couple other occasions that I've had. And so I can't really do an in-depth variant of a review of a vehicle that I find out here. So this is basically just going to be a quickie, as I would refer to it. So what we got right here is a Grand Caravan unlike most other Grand Caravans. A bit of a luxury package with some sport features, including some pretty impressive little rims that do have some detailing work that might need to be done. And with a nice unique interior, complete with some black leather and even armrests. I will personally say that unlike other Dodge Grand Caravan models that I've seen, especially with a large antenna, which is able to pick up some pretty big radio broadcasts nearby. We also can't forget about the signature sort of grille that it has right here on the front. Basically speaking, I'm looking at a Grand Caravan that is unlike anything else I've ever seen. Mostly because of the fact that its condition is just really well done. There's 3 rows of seats, especially if you can see from the backside. Not to mention a pretty nice backside, complete with a large back door that is able to allow for some pretty huge cargo space as well as passenger space depending on how the back seats are configured. This model does in fact come with its own set of locking doors that can be locked remotely or even by the usage of a key. Now, that door does not have a keyhole, but the driver's side one does. We sure, of course, cannot forget to mention that from the front side, it's an incredible view, almost like a vista or panoramic view that you'd be able to see clearly from all sides possible. Now, when you compare it to my Juke, for instance, I will say that the visibility on this one probably isn't the best. It's one of those that I'd have to get accustomed to in order to be able to ensure that I have myself a safe, comfortable ride by all means. Looking at the front, this large dip, which does allow for the wipers to tuck in during large rain or windstorms. And the Grand Caravan doesn't really seem to have that dip, but that's mostly because of the reason that it does allow for the wipers to be easily accessible. In this case though, if you wanted to do some maintenance on the wipers, you probably have to get some TLC put together. And also when discussing the vehicles in terms of power, the Juke itself has a nice big engine on the inside, unlike most other Jukes I've seen so far. And then you have the Grand Caravan, which of course comes standard with a nice large engine, mostly a V8, but you can optionally find Grand Caravan models that have other kinds of engines installed in them. V8s and V10s are usually the most common to find out there. There's also, of course, the usage of 4 different kinds of headlights. You have yourself the indicators or hazards, the typical halogen style, which are used for the dark, brights, as well as some other points. This one also does come with its own set of fog lamps, just to ensure that total visibility within fog or any other environment is possible. Another comparison that I seem to find on this that you can't really disagree with. This of course has fog lamps, but unfortunately mine are really filthy and are probably going to have to be replaced at some point. Not to mention that, well, these are the hazards. They stick out the side, whereas typically you'd find them sticking out the front with some visibility on the side. So easy for any driver to be able to spot you easily. Then you have yourself the brights and the halogens up here in the front. Grills, of course, are also a big difference. There's the V-shaped metal piece, then there's the plus shape right here. I'm finding a lot of comparisons between both this Nissan Juke and this Dodge Grand Caravan. But I'm mostly finding a lot of other things that you can't necessarily point a finger on all too much. Because this has more power, more practicality, more space for cargo and passengers. This does not necessarily have the benefit of the latter all too much, but it still is pretty impressive given that it has itself a unique crossover shape for something this small. Not to mention a unique set of bullfrog eye headlamps. I'd probably refer to them as bullfrog eyes for the most part, at least. It's got itself a nice set of rims, which could need some replacement or at least some cleanup. Not to mention the color scheme on this is a somewhat custom paint job. Midnight Sapphire, a combination of black, sapphire blue, and even some purple highlights. If you're able to get a close enough view for it to look in the sun, then some purple may be visible. This, of course, is just a standard charcoal black for the most part, which is one of several color options that the Grand Caravan came with during the 2014 model production year. Then, of course, with the tail lamps, they were mint standard on the Grand Caravan, typical shape that you might find on most cars. But this sort of thing, the slash, as I'd probably refer to it in this case with my Juke, certainly is a bit different by all means compared to most. Not to mention a brake lamp even situated underneath the spoiler. Then, of course, there's the back wiper and a nice large rugged bold shaping on the entire outside near the backside. And then, of course, with the usage of vertical handles for the rear. Unfortunately, the rear doors on the Grand Caravan are the same shape in terms of the handle as the front. This has typical handles on the Juke for the front side, the back side, totally different. So without a doubt, I'm seeing a lot of different things that are different between the Grand Caravan and the Nissan Juke. But all in all, I do commend this car for its presence, its practicality, its value, its power, and for how common this thing has been. It's very, very long running. And the Grand Caravan will most likely be here to stay for years to come, depending on any way that you look at it.